Hi, I'm Tim Zacharias with Cougar USA and your host of Building Value. We are in the Grundfos booth at the 2022 AHR Expo in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am joined by Sherezad Shafiq with Grundfos. He is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Americas for USA and Canada. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm super excited
Awesome.
to be here.
Awesome. Well, always excited to talk with you, and we've got a great episode. We are going to be talking about the recent restructuring of Grundfos and the now big focus on commercial building services and how that's going to benefit us. Also going to be talking about the shift from products to solutions and his outlook on our industry going forward. On Building Value, we go behind the scenes of building operations to showcase the people and products that make buildings work and the value they bring to the community. Can you tell me about where you grew up?
I'm originally from Bangladesh, and I grew up there till I was 19 years old when I moved to Canada. So basically most of my life I've lived in North America. Longer here than I've lived in Bangladesh.
Yeah,
so
it's really cool.
It's different.
Absolutely. So what do you feel like is, pretty unique upbringing? And I know a lot of that, your professional life has been with Grundfos in Canada and some other places, but what do you feel like that, is maybe different about growing up in Bangladesh versus what you've experienced over here in North America?
I mean, one of the biggest things for me has been, like, my dad, I basically grew up in the pump business, right? So my dad was, worked for KSB Pumps. I was running around in the factories.
Oh, that's cool.
Safety was interesting, let's put it that way. But hey, we did it. I had fun. So, like, that part of my life kind of built me up to what I am today, basically,
sure.
Right? My work ethic or things of that nature. So I wouldn't give that up for anything, right?
Absolutely.
that sort of made me kind of respect a lot of things that I have today.
Absolutely,
right? So
yeah.
It's kind of cool that way.
Yeah, very cool. So what made what was behind the move to Canada?
If my wife's listening, that's going to be a problem because she was my girlfriend back then, and she was moving to Canada. So I decided, I might as well do that too.
Yeah.
So the story to her is she followed me. But the real story is I did follow her.
That's cool.
So that's how it worked.
Yeah, they have a way of having that power over you.
I know you know that.
Absolutely,
There you
absolutely. Well, so very cool. So you end up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start working for Grundfos?
That's an interesting story as well. So my dad back in Bangladesh was a distributor for Grundfos. So I was working in the shipping department, selling pumps, selecting pumps, and things like that. So when I moved to Canada, I went to school at the University of Waterloo, where you work for 4 months, or study for 4 months, and work for 4 months.
Very cool.
In your field of expertise. So I kept bugging Grundfos to say, hey, I want to come and work for you. Grundfos first couple of times said, it's cool, but we don't have anything for you. But I was a persistent sales guy, right? So I didn't give up. And at one point they said, all right, fine, just to get you off our back, come and sort of do this. In Canada, there's a voltage issue, right? It's 575 volt versus 460. So all the very beautiful products that Grundfos have, they
weren't
don't
available.
have the 575 version. So my job was to do a single pump booster system in like 575, a variant design.
Interesting.
Right? So pump, base, panel, or a VFD and sort of sensor, and that's it, right? Very much like the Cougar rental pumps.
We're a little familiar with that application.
I know what you mean, yeah. So that's what I did.
Very cool.
And then sort of never looked back. I just kept working for them, even through school and everything.
So, how many years ago was that?
18 years ago.
18 years, wow. So fast forward 18 years, you're now the Vice President, Sales and Marketing for USA and Canada. I mean, that's a big jump from kind of almost pacifying your want to come work to Grundfos to being in that role. So how did that play out? It's
been a journey. It's been a great journey. I mean, so throughout that whole product engineering time, as an intern, I did product engineering. But when I came out of school, they wanted Grundfos Canada was setting up their commercial sales division.
Okay.
I became a back office engineer who kind of set up the quoting and all of those things. And if you know me, and I know you do, I'm not the type who'll sit in an office and just, I like to talk to people, I like to be out there, right? So I did that for about a year, and then I moved to Vancouver. It was around the Winter Olympics time. We had a bunch of specs out there, so I became a salesperson. So I was responsible for British Columbia, the region. And then I did well, positioned ourselves as number one, number two in that market, commercially, right, profitably.
Yeah.
So suddenly I got a phone call saying, hey, can you do the same thing in Alberta and do the same thing in the other regions? So here you're now the regional sales manager for Western Canada.
Nice.
So I ended up becoming a regional sales manager at a pretty young age. The youngest, I was the youngest by, I don't know, 20 years.
That's awesome.
But it was fun, and I enjoyed that role very much, because what happened to me at that point was, when you're selling for yourself, you have all the levers to pull, right? When you want to get your incentives or make money.
Yep.
But now I have to convince somebody else.
Right. Motivate others to do it.
Exactly.
Yep.
That was challenging, but it was a lot of fun.
Yep.
So then what happened was, I was sitting at a board meeting, because I was part of the leadership team in Canada, where our regional managing director, Duncan Cooper, was really angry at us because we were apparently not selling enough. And what I said to him was, if your back office support is that bad, I can't sell. You're familiar with that too.
I'm sure that went over very well.
You know what happened, though? I got moved to Houston.
They were like, okay, you want to complain about it? You got to go fix it.
You got to go fix it. So yes, that's where I sort of moved to run the customer support center for about a couple of years.
Yep.
And then, I've kind of always been like, hey, there's a problem here, go fix it. The West Coast service was a problem, so that was what I was tasked with.
You're the wolf.
Sure. And then that's it. I don't know. Commercial business is fine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I ended up in the West Coast. I lived in service for 5-6 years. I think the longest stint I've had at Grundfos in one role.
Nice.
And then this role opened up. Greg called me and said, hey, come and join. So that's what I did.
Very nice.
I like the sales side, right?
Yeah.
So I was excited to come back to it.
Very cool. So, I think a lot of people in our industry know Grundfos, know it's a big global company, the largest pump company in the world, right? The largest pump company in the U.S. too, by footprint. And so there's been this kind of reorganization that's gone on globally. And I know for a lot of people, they probably don't have a feeling of what it takes to run a massive company like Grundfos. So how is that, what was that restructuring, I guess how was it before and how is it now? And how does your role as the VP of Sales Marketing for North America fit into that?
Great question. I mean, Grundfos, for the longest time was a box products company. That's why we're the largest pump manufacturer in the world. We make 16, 17 million pumps a year. You throw a million here and there, right? We make a lot of the little pumps. We used to. Right? Over time, Grundfos expanded our product line to become not just a pump manufacturer, but a solutions provider. So that solution is different for sort of applications, based on application. A commercial building solution is different than a municipal water system solution, than an industrial process system solution.
Even though it's using the same pumps and VFDs and controls and all that.
All of the above, right? How you apply it is where it changes.
Sure.
So for Grundfos, we used to be based on sort of country or region based. So we had a country president or a regional managing director who had all the verticals under them.
Right.
What happens in that situation is whatever is easiest to sell, you sell that, right? So certain parts of the business would get neglected where we have a lot of potential to grow in those areas, right?
Sure.
So the new structure, we call it 1 to the power of 4, which is pretty cool. It's one Grundfos, but to the power of 4, because now we're focusing on verticals, right? So commercial buildings is a vertical, right? We're calling them divisions.
Sure.
I'm not entirely a fan of the word division, but it's, let's say verticals or segments, right?
Business unit,
business
segment.
Whatever you want to call it, right? So commercial buildings is one, right? Then we have our trade business, which is the domestic buildings, right? So a commercial building customer sitting in the U.S. has more similarity to another commercial building customer sitting in Asia Pacific, let's say. However, a commercial building customer has less of similarity to a municipal customer in the same geography.
Sure.
So that's the point. That's what we were trying to
That makes
trying
sense.
to do. Yeah. And for me, why this is exciting is because now we have focus on my vertical, and it's an end-to-end responsibility. So the buck stops at our CEO, divisional CEO. You know, you talk about the factories, you talk about service, you talk about, you know, sort of sales, soup to nuts.
Yep.
All the investments will happen in this sort of leadership team.
That's great.
So it's easier for us to go and ask for, here's what we want to do.
Right.
And here's how much money we need, or here's the support we need. And it's easier to get that support. So that's the exciting part about what we're doing today. We're positioning ourselves to become a solutions provider for the commercial buildings industry, a holistic solution provider from end to end, basically.
Yep. No, and I know it hasn't been that long that we've been in the new structure, but definitely I think it's already been beneficial. And you know, we talk about the reps being a partner of Grundfos, and we definitely feel that partnership is getting stronger with the new structure, and being able to, like you said, kind of tailor solutions and just the way that y'all are doing business in general to the needs of our market.
100%.
Right? And, you know, I think maybe if we wanted to talk about the differences between the different verticals, maybe like CBS, DBS, that'd be like a whole nother podcast, like what really what the division is there. We don't have to go into that right now.
There you go.
But I mean, I do think that the commercial building services market has a pretty unique way of going to market,
100%.
right, with through the partnerships here in the U.S. And I think that's maybe one of the struggles that we've had in the past is that it's not the way that it's done all over the world for Grundfos. And so having this be more of a U.S.-centric approach and leadership team, I think is going to really pay dividends for Cougar and for our customers.
And I'm so happy to hear that, because that's exactly the intention. And, you know, we keep talking about this. We don't fight with our competitors on the street every day. It's our partners that do. What we are good at is making that great product.
Absolutely.
Right? Supporting that product, right? Sometimes we're good at it, sometimes we're bad at it, but that's the intention.
Sure.
We want to make the good product, and we want to support the good product. At the end of the day, our partners are an extended arm of us, right? And we have to make sure that partnership is as strong as it gets. We want our partnerships and our network to be the envy of the HVAC industry. To say, that's the kind of network I want. Right. Right? And we're going to get there, I think.
I think so too. And, you know, we had a great partner meeting yesterday, and definitely starting to see that, you know, the CBS partners coming together, even working together, helping everybody get better. So, you know, what do you feel like looking forward? How is this going to kind of improve the Grundfos experience for, you know, specifying engineers, the installing contractor, and the end users in the commercial building services market?
And it's an interesting question, because if you think about it, our partners, our partner network, our partners, already they're entrepreneurs, they're business people, right? Like yourself. You know how to look after your end customer.
Yes.
Right? You do, and you do it well. That's why they keep coming back to you, right?
Hopefully, yes.
That's it, right? So that is what we want to double down on, right?
Okay.
Where our end user customers should have that feeling that, hey, you're not just dealing with like Cougar Sales in Houston. You're actually dealing with Cougar Sales, who has the backup of Grundfos, multi-billion-dollar corporation, who has the products that sort of will really make their building and as energy efficient as possible, as comfortable as possible, for as in the most economic way. But then you also know that you have this fantastic support network to support that product and support the actual application. So the end users should feel really, really comfortable working with us, because you've got this beautiful network. Specifying engineers will essentially, it'll make their lives a lot more easier, right?
Yes.
Than to just simply, because specifying engineers, it's tough for them to be an expert on everything. So our responsibility is to actually say, hey, this is the criteria, design criteria. Here is what we feel is a strong sort of solution for that criteria. and here's how we're going to back that up,
Yeah.
right? That's how that experience should go.
Right, and specifically with, either the software tools or the, the solutions, like the products and systems that we have behind us being geared specifically to commercial buildings and not this huge portfolio that Grundfos offers for all industries.
Exactly, and having the right collateral for that, having the right support network for that, that's what we want to do. So
Yep.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and like I said, I am too. And, I think one of the things that we've tried to, we've tried to tell that story that, we are backed by Grundfos, the largest pump company in the world. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that it's also the largest pump company in the U.S., right? I mean, the footprint of manufacturing, distribution, support, all that in the U.S. is huge for Grundfos.
It is.
So can you talk a little bit about that? I know you mentioned a couple of the spots already, but, maybe just kind of talk a little bit about the different factories, distribution facilities, everything like that in the U.S.
Yeah, so I mean, what we tried to do in the U.S. is basically make sure that we are covered across the country, right? And North America, if you think about it,
Sure.
the U.S. is a big part of that, essentially where all our infrastructure is. We also have some infrastructure in Canada, for example.
Right.
So if you start from this side of the country, right, east side of the country, we've got Allentown, which is a DC, distribution center, right? So the purpose of Allentown is to have products sitting on the shelf so that our East Coast customers, right, east of the Mississippi, can actually get the support they need, right? Quick products, quick fire responses, right? We also have, SUS in Memphis, Tennessee, which is actually a third-party warehouse that we use for immediate part supply, right? So if you're down and you have a mechanical seal down or a motor down or something like that, you could quickly go online and order that, and that part will automatically go without having any human interaction, essentially.
Very cool.
That's the intention, right? Then you come to Texas, which is basically our hub for commercial building services, actually, in the U.S. That's where we have the largest, extremely massive footprint in Brookshire. We just actually bought a new building. We bought a bunch of land, built a new building, and we're going to continue to build factories. Our package systems are built over there. Our standard cast iron pumps are actually built there. We have engineering there. We have it's a pretty big setup.
Some pumps are built there too now.
Some pumps are built there too now. Exactly. We have the test facility there. So, and that's a big sort of footprint that kind of covers the whole country there.
And not only that, we did work with y'all to kind of have some strategic stock moved from those other facilities to Brookshire during the hurricane season.
Exactly.
In the event that we had an issue. I mean, obviously it was nice that we didn't have any major issues this past hurricane season, but to have that kind of partnership to say, okay, we've got all of this material, because you go back to Harvey, we did work in all those facilities you just talked about, bringing all that material to Houston on dedicated truckloads. So we said, okay, well, let's maybe move a little bit of that early and say, okay, well, let's just have that here. So we had some booster systems. They built up some of the sump pump stock, things like that. So, it's a great resource for us to have in Brookshire. It's definitely a very impressive facility.
Isn't that exactly what we talked about, a partnership, right? That is key, right?
Yes.
So we're stronger on supporting the market
Absolutely.
that way. We have another big setup in Fresno, California. That's where Grundfos first came in.
I still need to go visit that.
You haven't seen that?
I haven't been to Fresno
yet. You have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to do the Yosemite trip.
Okay.
And you see, I like mountains. That's why I live on that side of the country. So that facility is also a fantastic facility where all our standard Grundfos, true Grundfos products like the CRs, the Magnas, the UPSs, the booster systems, all of those are built there.
Yep.
It is a great facility from the standpoint of we have a solar farm there, right? So our majority of our electricity is actually coming from that.
Very cool.
We have a retention pond, which kind of we also have in Brookshire, right? So we are very much conscious about our commercial buildings. The message that we put out, we should live by that, practice what we preach. So all our buildings are like that, where we actually sort of publish our sustainability report, which you have access to. Go online and you'll see it. It'll clearly define or tell us what our situation is from a sustainability perspective.
No, that's really slick. And I mean, I was lucky enough to be involved in part of a small part in the new headquarters building in Brookshire, and it was definitely a big part of the conversation was, how do we design this building in a way to where we get that LEED Platinum status, and being out in the middle, not in a central business district, there was some of that low-hanging fruit LEED-wise that, those LEED points that you'd normally get in the business district that you don't get out there. So it was pretty impressive to see all that come together and see the different applications for that. But the Fresno facility I've definitely heard a lot about, and I know the test stand just got expanded, for the booster systems to accommodate the CRXLs, which is really cool. So, so that's coast to coast.
But there's more.
But there's more, right? But wait, there's more.
There's more because we talk about service, for example.
But what about Indianapolis too?
See, that's where Indianapolis is actually our Peerless facility.
Yep.
Which is actually a brand that we own, Grundfos owns, but we're separate companies. So we try not to, we work together, but then again, they're independently. They're in a very different market than us.
Very, yes.
Fire pump market, which is, has its own sort of nuances, basically.
Absolutely.
So service capabilities now, right? We have service in the Pacific Northwest. We use and service in sort of California, service in Brookshire, or around the Houston area, service in Chicago, which is a pretty big office for us now. It's a sales and service office, basically.
Right.
What that means is we have a training facility there. We have a full shop with test beds and everything. All our service facilities look like that. We have one in Allentown as well.
Nice.
So that's why we want coast-to-coast support, right? So it's not just the DCs and the factories. It's also the service capabilities.
Yeah, and it's an impressive footprint, and I think there might be kind of a misconception that they're like, oh, well, it's Grundfos that just comes over from Europe or wherever else, and not to say that some of the components don't come from other parts of the country, but it is other Grundfos factories, right? I mean, so it is, we're proud to say that, largest pump company in the world and the largest pump company in the U.S. So definitely an impressive kind of footprint and support here in the U.S. And from what I gathered, I think it's only going to get better too, right, with the CBS specific focus.
Correct. And we are actually on a journey to expand that footprint at some point. We're always looking at optimizing the footprint, right, to say, do we need a DC in the north, or do we need a DC somewhere else that would actually give us a more strategic opportunity?
Right.
So we're always looking at that. But then it's also quite interesting that our partners, right, become that extended arm for us, right? So it's not. So this is as holistic as it can be when it comes to a support network, basically. That's what we want to build.
Absolutely. So when you I feel like there's some really cool things that product-wise, system-wise, that Grundfos has been introducing over the last couple of years. And, we've got the distributed pumping wall behind us, and going to be talking with Pete and Chris about that more in depth. But, what do you feel like are some of the trends either internally with the Grundfos offering, or just in general with our industry? Like, where do you kind of see things moving over the next couple of years?
It's pretty clear, and we've been talking about this building efficiency, energy efficiency, the Paris Agreement.
Yep.
We have to reduce our footprint or our energy consumption in buildings by 50% by 2030 or 2035 to get to that Paris Agreement requirement.
That says as a start. It could potentially take as much as 90% reduction to get there by 2050. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's kind of, we believe that, and we want to support that, right, in that situation. So the market there are some low-hanging fruits there as well. We still use cast iron trimmed impellers and no VFDs and valves, PRVs and things of that nature to control sort of air in a building, let's say, or control water pressures in a building. We got to stop doing that, right? So that's the first thing. So that's why you'll see in Grundfos's sort of world, we're talking about all variable speed products. We're talking about ECM motors so that we can cut down on energy consumption.
Right.
We're talking about solid control of those products so that we can actually really do on-demand pumping, truly on-demand pumping, right? And so the other big thing about Grundfos is, and not just Grundfos, we would like the market, the trend to change. So we want our competitors to jump on the same bandwagon with us, right? The more our competitors come in with ECM products, we are like, well done, let's do this. We're doing this together.
Yeah,
right?
Welcome to the show.
That's it, right? So we want that, right? So that's how we collectively see that trend. That trend's not going to go away. That low-hanging fruit is still there.
Sure.
Right? The next part is actually sort of the package systems world that we're going into. It's a world with labor shortages. I just read a stat that day that the demand for HVAC technicians is growing at a 15% click per year, whereas other trades is only about 7 to 8%.
Wow.
So there's not enough sort of labor.
Right.
There's not enough skilled labor to support that in the business, in the market. How do we do that? Is it we're now approaching, the industry is approaching a slightly different sort of, it's been there before where, we sort of go away from a custom built for every application to a more product approach, right? Standardized, enough customizable, but standardized, built in a controlled environment so that when it goes to site, your on-site labor is reduced as much as possible. It's not just manufacturers doing this, contractors are doing a big prefab stuff, take it to the prefab it in your facility, building, BIM is becoming a big deal, right? Now, not just that, you got augmented reality, right? That's becoming a big deal, right? You get use of drones, for example, to get sort of a good sort of idea and picture of how we're going to fit this in. And all of this is cutting down construction time on site.
Absolutely.
Right? Cutting down that labor requirement on site, right? So that's huge. That is just to say that it's cutting down labor requirement doesn't mean it's taking away labor.
No, somebody still has to be able to install that, do all the piping.
But they do it in a controlled environment,
right,
which is much better than having to do this on site.
There's a lot less variables in the shop than in the field.
And safety, right? That's a big deal as well. So that trend is here to stay. That's what we believe, especially COVID has really pushed that further, and that trend's not going away. And that's a good thing for us, right? Because we see as a sort of industry, the construction industry is, I think, takes a huge chunk of GDP, for example, right? However, the productivity increase from the construction industry hasn't been as much as the others.
Interesting.
So that's an interesting situation, right? So that it's like a big boat. It takes a while to move, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. But this modularization conversation is driving that productivity increase, right? And that's what the trend is right now in my mind.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And everybody wants everything to move fast, right? I mean, you're seeing project schedules wanting to be compressed. People want to get these things built, up, turned over, and having a custom-built system where everything has to be on site and then it all piped up, laid out, is definitely going to be slower than being able to choose from pre-built, pre-engineered systems, modular systems, and just picking and choosing what you need and dropping it on site versus, that's definitely going to speed up your timeline.
Totally. And I mean, what that also allows us to do are things like distributed pumping, right? So what I mean by that is, pump people know how to control pumps, right?
Sure.
So we will build a controller that sort of integrates into a system to give you the maximum amount of energy efficiency that you can get. So yes, we control pumps properly and do on-demand pumping, but what about chiller efficiency, right? The fact that the pumps are running at a certain sort of are disconnected or disjointed from what the way the chiller needs to operate is a problem, right? If we can maximize that delta T, right, and grab as much heat from the space as we can with the chill water that we're pumping, that's going to change building efficiency substantially.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're working towards. This modularization is taking it into that step that, hey, now in a controlled environment, I can actually have a system that is optimized to its ultimate sort of point, right?
Right.
So that's a big one. So that's why you'll see a lot of, and we want our competitors to start doing that as well, because like I said, we're going to do this together.
I mean, you're pushing the market, right? 100%. I mean, everybody eventually is going to kind of move that way. They potentially will if they want to keep up.
That's exactly right, and they will, they will.
But especially with the distributed pumping and a lot of the other stuff, and we've been doing it with the hydrant PCs on the pressure boosting side for a long time. Kind of falls into that what we would consider a high performance solution, and that's the high performance buildings term that's been around for a while, and ASHRAE's pushed, and our kind of definition of that is a simplified version, not all encompassing like theirs can be, but basically that it's sustainably designed for the maximum comfort, reliability, and safety at the lowest life cycle cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I think that, and rightfully so, when you look at Grundfos products, I think the initial impression sometimes can be like, wow, that looks expensive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It is a premium product. But if you look at it over the life cycle,
Mm-hmm.
there's no doubt that it's going to be the lowest life cycle cost. And it's through that energy savings longer term,
Exactly.
the improved performance of the ancillary equipment, like what you're talking about with the chiller.
Right.
That chiller savings by increasing the delta T is far going to exceed probably the pump energy saved, right, in a chill water system. So, and no doubt, Grundfos as a company being sustainable, but also that the pumps themselves, the systems themselves being sustainable over the long life cycle, saving water and energy, and then hopefully providing the best comfort, whether it's pressure boosting or in that closed loop application. So
Totally. Yeah.
That's really where we're kind of pushing, or the way that we see that we fit into this
Mm-hmm.
new world that you're talking about with the climate agreement,
Mm-hmm.
trying to reduce the carbon emissions from an existing building, or whether it's trying to fit into the meeting a company's ESG reporting requirements, whether it's the building itself or the company that's occupying that building having those requirements they want to meet, or whether it's a large investment company that's saying, I want to invest in
Totally. Yep.
green buildings. Either way, our solutions being high performance like that are going to help move the building in the right direction in terms of sustainability, energy savings, water
100%.
savings.
100%. Another really interesting thing I was just reading up on, which I know you do this because we're building nerds, I guess, but like living concrete. Have you heard about this?
No.
This is so self-healing concrete. So there's
Interesting.
no potholes over time. Like
Okay.
those types of materials, there's a change in that view to be more sustainable, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Your materials have to be different, right? So, in our magnet 3s, we use a different material than a standard magnet, right? So those are examples of how the sort of manufacturing world is going to change as well.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be a huge impact on the tech side. The big focus, venture capital right now towards the climate tech with everything that's going around, the same reasons we just talked about. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting from a technology standpoint, too, what we're going to see kind of happen in the years to come.
Totally.
So, I feel like like you said earlier, you started with Grundfos at a pretty young age and had a pretty vertical path through the company, through multiple different parts of the company. What kind of advice would you have for somebody that's wanting to get into the commercial buildings industry? There's a lot of different opportunities, and like we said, there's a lot of there's some shortages either of skilled labor or just in general in our industry. So what kind of advice would you have for people, or what would be your pitch for joining the commercial building services world?
Great question. I mean, the typical stuff, I hate to say this, but this is important to say, that there is really no shortcut to this, right? You got to work, you got to put your head down and do your work, right?
Fair enough.
To get noticed and to get to where you need to get to. So work ethic is a big conversation for me. I talk to my kids about this all the time, right?
Yep.
That, hey, I know it's easier to maybe do this, but you got to put the time in to learn that, right?
Absolutely.
So why this is important is, example, trade schools, right? Trade schools were never that sexy, right? They're always, I don't want to get into trade school. I want to go into university. I'm a mechanical engineer. I believe that if I actually went to trade school first and then came out and did my mechanical engineering degree, I'd be a much better mechanical engineer than I am today.
Yeah, you have the practical hands-on knowledge. Yeah.
And I would really encourage people to do that, right? Because you end up earning money.
Oh, yeah.
You end up getting some experience that, will make you a better sort of engineer. And then you end up doing what you wanted to do anyway, which is become a mechanical engineer. So the idea is, sometimes theoretical design or theoretical things that we do and what reality is don't jive. It's time to do that, right? We got to jive.
See it on job sites every day.
Exactly the point, right? So we got to jive. We got to do that. And what I feel is that with the technology things that are happening, with the push to become, sustainable, with the push to become, responsible about your buildings, about the space that you occupy, this is an exciting time for young people to say, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that journey.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's the pitch for me to say, the trades it's sexy.
Yeah.
It's cool. And we
Yep.
got to make it cooler, right?
Yep.
Learn that business first, do the work, and then get your degree. Sure, no problem.
Absolutely.
But then join our industry. We
Yep.
need more qualified people in the construction industry who care about it, who
Right.
care about making a difference in this world.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about our industry is we have that tangible benefit to what you do, right? And I joke about it all the time that, you know, drive around Houston, start pointing out buildings
Yep.
like, oh, we did this in this building, we did
Right.
this in this building. And at first, you know, my wife's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. And now it's like, oh, again, really? My son still thinks it's cool, so
I think it's
could
cool.
play that.
Yeah,
But,
there you go.
but, you know, I think there's a lot of pride in our industry in having that impact and you know, basically kind of being behind the scenes of making these buildings work. I mean, when we were riding the monorail over here,
Right.
you know, you're kind of riding between all the casinos. And so
Mhm.
it's like, oh, man, look at these central plants. Like, look how big these are.
Exactly.
You know, we're kind of nerding out on that stuff. But you walk down Las Vegas Boulevard and you don't see any of that.
Right.
So it's pretty cool to be on the other side and know that you play a little bit of little part in that in keeping those buildings up and going.
Yeah, it is something to be proud of, I think. You know,
Yeah.
that's how, you know, that's another pitch for a young person too, right? To
Yep.
say, hey, you know, come on, take pride in the work you do. So
Absolutely.
that's cool.
Well, man, I appreciate your time today. I know we've
Thank you.
it's got a busy booth here at the AHR Expo. Hopefully not too distracting, but really enjoy the conversation. Always do.
Always do.
So definitely appreciate you sharing about Grundfos and kind of the new structure and how that's going to positively impact us as you know, in this commercial buildings sector. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I also want to thank all of you for watching and listening, and hope to see you on the next episode of Building Value.